Hello, everyone, and welcome to J Champions Conference. I'm Neha Sardana. I'm very lucky to have Rustam Mehenmandarov with me. He's a Java champion and he's an expert on Java, cloud native Java applications, and he's going to be talking about 5 tips to make your Java applications more awesome. So rather than waiting and me talking about it, let's have Rustam be on the stage and take it away, Rustam.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for the introduction and hello from. I normally would say Oslo, Norway, but actually it's Dublin this time. So I'm here with the Dublin Java User Group, and we're streaming from Dublin. So this is really fun. Doing something a little bit different this time. And thanks, like I said, thanks a lot for the introduction. Now, it's really nice to have you as my moderator, my fellow Java champion. And okay, let's get started. So today I am going to talk about, I called it like 5 tips to making your Java application more awesome. It doesn't really say much in the title. It did leak some stuff in the abstract, but I kind of tried to say things without actually saying what I'm going to do. A lot of those things that I'm going to talk about is some things that I see people do over and over again in their applications. You can call it nowadays app modernization, creation of more cloud native application, all these kind of different names, and there will be some similar aspects to it of what I'm going to be talking about. Since we're all programmers and we kind of love starting counting from, zero, I started with 0 and a little bit of introduction first, and then we're going to do the 5 things that I'm going to be talking about. By the way, if you see the drawings on the side and you think they are super weird, blame me. Somebody had a very acute thing of procrastination and ended up drawing all the icons. I'm not going to say any names, but there was this guy. So introduction. This is not drawn by me, I promise. This actually is looking much better. I want to start with a little bit of a history of Java EE, Jakarta EE. This is the only slide that I have, but I kind of want to start with this because, you have a lot of programming languages where they say, our language is so cool because batteries are included. You have all the kind of libraries, you have all that, and you have all this. But actually, we've been doing that with Java as well for quite some time. For a long time. And it was just called Java EE Enterprise Edition. And, we started with things like, doing some stuff for web services. We started with EJBs. We had some dependency injection, all these kind of things. And it was developing, starting with Java J2 EE, JEE, Java EE, and then it became Jakarta EE, and then, it kind of continued developing further and further and further. Now we are on Jakarta EE 10. That was released not so far a long time ago. And the reason I'm mentioning all of that is because we're going to be using some parts of Jakarta EE in a second. So the idea is Jakarta EE provides some libraries that you can use for useful things. So in our case, since we're going to be talking about the modern apps, and in the modern world, we're really in love with microservices. We're splitting up monoliths day and night. If you kind of look at the at the schedules of a random conference, you'll still see like splitting up the monolith for a millionth time. But so we're doing that, and we're doing microservices. We're doing like web REST-based applications, and so on, so on, so on. At least that's one of the things that we're doing, and that's what we're going to be talking about here. In that case, we're more interested in, let's say, things like JAX RS. JSON stuff, maybe, all these kind of things. But so Jakarta EE has some, but there are also some things that are missing there that are added on top of that. And that is even something that makes it even more friendly for web services and stuff like that, and web-based interfaces. So enter something called MicroProfile And this is a new version of a MicroProfile that was also released not that long time ago, this winter. MicroProfile version 6.0. The biggest change that was there is that now they have adopted this thing. They put a bunch of squares that you see up there. There was even more down there, and those were all put together, and now they're packaged as a Jakarta EE core profile. So that's where you have dependency injection. That's where you have JAX-RS, and all those kind of things. So that's why I was talking about Jakarta EE to begin with. But we have and some extra libraries on top of that that even make your applications even more kind of awesome and stuff like that. So I'm going to talk about some of those, but this is not going to be pure MicroProfile talk. That's for sure. But we're going to talk quite a bit about that as well. Anyway, so what is a part of core profile? So this is the list of things. So this is I pulled from a specification document for that you see linked here on the side there. It is a specification of what is there. So you have annotations, you have dependency injection, you have JSON processing, JSON binding, RESTful web services, things like that. All right. So now we know what is core profile. We know that there is something called MicroProfile. And we can talk about things that make your apps much better, a little bit better, tiny little bit better. You don't really need to implement all of those things at once or even at all. But if you do that, your users may be a little bit happier than they used to be. Even though they're super happy, they might be a little bit happier. Because I see this kind of things happening especially with a bit more of a legacy kind of applications. People didn't have to think about that. People used to solve it in a different way. People would, for example, things like fault tolerance. Fault tolerance, I tried to summarize it in one sentence, but basically is that, well, what happens to your application when something fails, especially something that you don't have control over? I mean, if something happens to your own application and your fault, yeah, it sucks. It's really bad, but I mean, you have yourself to blame. You should have tested. You can say a lot of those things, but you don't really have to say this kind of things to yourself, right? Because what you can do is actually gracefully handle those errors. So fault tolerance. What happens when something you rely on fails, especially something that's outside your control? Well, I mean, what happens if your application can't reach a web service that's relying on? Will it crash? Will it just crash and crumble and go down in flames and just I don't know what's happening? You probably don't want to do that. You don't want to send back stacks and stacks and stacks of errors to user either, for many reasons. One, kind of aesthetic ones, but also security reasons and stuff like that as well. So you might want to handle that anyway, but typically hopefully not with just try catch and say, oops, something bad happened. But you might want to have something. You might want to have a failover service. You might want to say something informative. You might want to log it somewhere and all these things, right? Another problem is that, one of the things is that you might want to switch to a backup. So say, I don't know, we had this fun project that we were demoing to different talks with a colleague of mine and me, which was based on MicroProfile, and we used the weather service. And the weather service was pretty good, but it was a little bit unstable sometimes, but it would provide really accurate data. And then we were like, okay, how do we demo this? We can actually go to something that is less accurate because it's covering the whole world kind of service. But if our service fails, we can just query that one instead. And then users was always getting data, and we could actually also show up fault tolerance and all that. But that was a different story. But it was actually a failover, so users would probably not notice. Maybe they were like, okay, it's a couple of degrees off. It's not raining outside, just says it's raining or something like that, but it will actually still get an answer. So that was really nice. And other things we've seen, many examples in production in different cases out there in the wild is when your application fails somewhere and all the other parts that are depending on that start querying that service, and you basically, long story short, you end up DDoSing yourself. So you kind of running distributed attack on your own stuff because it's not responding, it's flooding network, it's flooding requests, there's a lot of things happening, everything just goes in flames, and then you have a much bigger problem that you kind of start with. So fault tolerance is a kind of good thing, right? But how many of you guys are doing that? Fault tolerance? Anyone? Okay, I have 2.5 hands. That's good. Like two hands and one like me. That's good. I like that. But that really, I mean, I love you guys, and I love the rest of you more if you will start doing that because your users will love you. How can you do that? Well, obviously you can code that yourself and make your application awesome, but you don't really want to do that. It's a kind of boilerplate code that you need to run over and over and over again. There is a spec for that, and the thing that I did not mention is that MicroProfile is a specification. It's not implementation. So they specify things and say how it should be, and it's up to the vendors that claim to be compatible with MicroProfile to actually implement that. So that's why it's a specification. And the specification is saying that you can use those annotations that you see on the screen: timeout, retry, fallback, circuit breaker, bulkhead, and asynchronous, to do stuff. So the stuff that we're going to be doing is that, okay, you can annotate methods, especially web service calls or stuff like that coming in your application with timeout. So how long are we going to, retry calling something? How long are we going to try reach something? 5 seconds? What's long enough? 10 seconds, 1 second, 1 millisecond, 100 milliseconds. But you define that. Another thing is that how many times do you want to retry? Do you want to retry over and over again and end up DDoSing yourself, or you want to give up after 3? And you can actually combine that with, for example, fallback. Because say like, okay, try it 3 times. If it fails after 3 times, do something else. And then it will actually fall back to another service. I have a tiny little demo I will try to do it at the end because I would like to go through all those things and to not risk of not being able to show you all these things and then showing you the demo in the middle. But I have a demo that kind of showcases that a little bit. Another thing is that circuit breakers in your home, if you plug in something really bad into your wall, instead of your house going up in flames, this little thing just flips a switch and kills a little circuit or something, and the rest of the home is still, fine. Probably a little bit dark, but fine. The same goes with applications. So circuit breakers is a really nice thing to have as well, which will make your application to fail a bit more graceful. Because we would like to think that we don't make bugs, right? We don't make errors. Never happens, But then there is somebody, there's somebody that is awake at night, that is like using your keyboard and your computer to commit your username to commit some weird stuff, and then you need to account for that. So in Norway we really like trolls, not the ones like on the internet, but we have like the old ones, the historical ones, classic ones. They also do this kind of stuff. So we can blame on them anyway. Yeah. What do you have here? You have something with here as well, right? Like trolls, leprechauns. Yeah. Are they also not so nice? They put bugs into your code. Yeah, they can. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry to hear that. That's why we have a failover, to counteract that. So this is a spec. This is a very readable link at the bottom there. But I'll share it with. If you need that, ping me, or you can Google it. MicroProfile fault tolerance spec. And you on the stream, you probably should be able to see that much better. There are different versions of that, so make sure that you're actually picking up the right version. The easiest way of doing that is actually going to the latest version of MicroProfile, which is 6.0, and go from there into specification documents, because each of those components will have a little bit different version. Actually, not a little bit, but quite a bit. So the demo that I was talking about, this is the kind of the stale version of that demo. So this is code on the screen, a lot of code on the screen. So one of the things that you probably should not do that at home, and I probably should not have done, but I still share a little bit of code for you with you. So the way you do that, you can actually. So here actually I'm showing a few things. So one thing I'm showing here that I'm not going to talk too much about, but there is something called the REST client. So you can actually talk to other REST services without writing all the boilerplate to do the HTTP and parsing of JSON and all this blah blah blah. Here we're actually just doing register REST client. The REST client is going to be talking to localhost 8080, far away. The path for like everything is going to be API, so it's going to be 8080/API, and then we're going to, if we go to a message, this is what's going to happen. If we go to message backup, this is what's going to happen. The cool thing here is that we have a fallback. So if actually message fails in the client, this is a client code. This is not the server code, right? This is the consumer part of the web service thing. If that backend on the message thing fails and returns you some kind of HTTP error, what do? Well, you call the fallback method, which is the other one. Okay. This is what happens on the server side. So I have implemented a super flaky web service that basically we're going to roll a dice. And if the number of the eyes on the dice is divisible by 2 without any rest, it's going to fail. No, actually, it's going to do success. It's going to fail the other way. Yeah. And I do return a very informative error, some weird error, and it's going to be a server error. Perfect. And if not, well, it's cool. My backup service is, so if I refresh that, so at some point it will fail. And if it will fail, it will go to my backup service, which is living under message/backup. And that will just say, so the first one will say hello there. And the other one was going to give you a backup hello. Very useful. I mean, like I said, I work with enterprise software, so this is how we do things. All right. So speaking of health, not mental health, because probably I'm not going to go there for myself anyway. But when you go crazy about stuff, you can actually go crazy about health of your application. And that is the second part that I want to mention. And that is, how do you actually ask your application how it's doing? You can actually just say, hey, are you okay? You're doing well. And that is health. And well, surprisingly enough, it's yet another specification in MicroProfile, but we'll get back to that later. I have a horrible pun up there. I know I'm not proud of it, but I still had to put it. So what's up? Yeah. Well, yeah, you get the point, right? It's really bad. Don't laugh, please. How do you make sure that your container is actually up and running, right? If you're putting your application into, say you're putting in the container, how do you make sure that your container is actually up and running? And then there is one thing. So you put your application in a container, and then you can actually check if your container is up. That's cool. But do you know if the application inside that container is still booting or it's up already? We don't know. Well, we do, but right now we don't. How do you decide when to scale? How you can actually create things like, say you have a really slow application, very quick container and very slow application. And then you created some rules that if the application is not responding within 10 seconds, create another instance and another instance and another instance. So while your application is booting, it says, oh, I'm ready. The container is up. And then Kubernetes or whatever you're using, look at that. It's like, oh, it's up. Ping. Oh, it's not live. Okay, then I'm going to create 100 new ones. And then you have a very huge bill. And worst case, your application is down and stuff like that. So you need to differentiate between readiness and liveliness probes and stuff like that. So that comes again, I mean, surprise, surprise, it's implemented or it's specified in MicroProfile Health. Um, Again, there might be different other ways of doing that, but here it's actually a specification in a lot of application servers or frameworks that you might be using. They actually most likely will implement that as well. I mean, Quarkus implements most of it, more or less, pretty much everything. A bunch of other things from Red Hat, IBM Open Liberty, Tommy, Payara, bunch of other things as well. Helidon from Oracle. So you have some choices. When we talk about health, we need to talk a bit more about things that you can measure, and things you can measure can be also metrics. Metrics is, yeah, I mean, how can you create a custom metrics and expose them on a platform through standard endpoints, through standard formats, but still your own stuff. So, for example, can you measure custom parameters? Can you count number of times your web service has been called? Can you figure out which of those 5 services that are kind of similar or totally different are more popular than the other ones? Can you just do that? Well, you can. You can just do this. You can do counted, and then you give it a very descriptive name, not like this, and then you just provide a few parameters and tags and stuff, and now it will be magically available at whatever endpoint you have /metrics. And then you can actually, and that's going to give you real-time information, right? It's not just going to give you like how I'm doing right now. Last time it was measured. Then you can use some tools to consume that, to map that, to graph it, to visualize that, and to do stuff with it. So we have now looked at metrics, we've looked at health, and we've looked at how to make our applications as little fault tolerant as possible. And this is really, really, really nice, because you don't have to really write much code. You just annotate it and you add a dependency into your POM file, and then that's it. You're done. Another thing, which is not the MicroProfile thing. I told you it's not going to be all of it, just a little bit. Feature toggling is another thing that is really, really useful. It can be useful in very many ways, in many, very many levels. But the whole idea is, how do I make features available to users when I want them to? And that can be a very different reason for this, that you want to do that. Because, for example, sometimes you just want to turn off a feature. You just want to, like, okay, I tried this thing, it's spamming down my whatever database or network or something like that. I just want to kill it. And I don't want to deploy a new version to do that. And I just want to flip a switch and then it's gone, right? Maybe you have a feature like that you're not really sure how it's going to behave or something like that. You might want to add a feature toggling for that. Another reason for doing that, you can do gradual releases, which is really fun. You can, for example, do a feature release. So you deploy, say you have created a super fantastic, amazing application that's available all over the world, but only for people in Ireland. You want to have a feature of, I don't know, flying green leprechauns just falling from the screen. Makes no sense to do that in Japan, but in Ireland it's really cool. And then you can actually say, you know what, if IPs are from Ireland, do that. And you can do that based on different things, or you might want to do that based on different things. It can be location, it can be type of users, it can be, I don't know, time of the day, whatever. Um, Another thing, partially implemented features. I've seen that a lot, and I've seen that a lot in even like old enterprise monolith applications, because they would ask you to implement something. And sometimes, like, we worked on a very big enterprise project for like huge customers, and sometimes they would be like, we want this feature, and then we all sit and code and do that, and then they were like, we're not ready to release that, we need to wait. What do you do? Do you like, delete the code from the app, and then you commit the new one, and then you wait for another month, and then you push that, and you get mergers and all this merge conflicts? Maybe not. You can actually add a flip, a switch, and then it can also be something that you're not really ready to implement. So, for example, it's a big feature, you're able to implement the front end, but you were not able to implement back end just yet. What do you do? Again, you keep the code and leave it and just wait for it to be committed, or you actually create a flip on like a feature toggle for the front end and say, you know what, don't show this div yet, don't render it, and then you can actually introduce the backend and fix everything on the next release and flip that switch, and ta-da, it's magically on. Um, how do you do that? Well, I mean, you can always do it by hand, but maybe you don't want to do that. It's a lot of logic, a lot of messy things to look into. And how do you, like, check all the users and all the IPs and all this kind of stuff? You can put it in a config file, but then it will probably be also either all or nothing, and then you still need to reread that config file. Maybe you need to restart your application. Kind of not really dream scenario, is it? Or you can use a tool. I mean, you can probably guess where I'm going, right? I mean, like, I'm showing you bad. It's like, ta-da, solution. But yeah, you can use a tool. But I try to keep to tools when I suggest something. I try to make sure it's open source. I try to make sure it's available for everyone and they can use it and everything. So today I want to mention something called Get Unleash, or well, getunleash.io. That's the website, but Unleash. And they do offer open source free version. They have some other versions as well, but this is the one I've kind of I've had really good experiences. I know that we used that for some projects that we have been working on at work, and it's kind of a bit of a magic in a way. The first time you see it, you're just like, whoa. I have it in my demo, and we'll see that in a little bit. It seems like we might have time for that. That's good. Um, Again, a stale version of that demo would be like that. So a spoiler alert is the code. I mean, do you see what happens? We have a unleash. That's the variable for the teacher feature toggling thing. And then we have a toggle called chaos, kind of inspired of the chaos monkey thing, chaos engineering, all this. And then we have a message. Well, it's a bug when you go to /feature on a web service, and we'll just turn you a message. It's a bug. But if you turn on the chaos, if you make it available, as you can see on the bottom, it's enabled in development. It just, with a flip of a switch, a bug becomes a feature. I know it's a bad joke, but it was just easy way of flipping that, like, to show you how the config works, and you can use that for much bigger things as well. So, for example, in the previous example where I had this randomness of failing service, I could have added a toggle saying, well, do chaos now, or don't do it, behave like it is normal. It was really easy to set up that thing. I just needed to do a Docker compose up, well, a clone first, and Docker compose up, and it was running. The most challenging thing was to actually not that. The most challenging was to wait for it to download on a hotel network. Building containers building containers on a hotel network is always fun. Yes, don't do that at home. Right. And the last thing I want to talk about, it's a kind of it's a bit of a bucket of things that we put together that did not really fit into the other categories, but I really want to mention them and I really mean that your application will get better. And instead of summarizing all those three things into one sentence, I've done the following. I have created one sentence of things you should not do. Can you guess what that is? Like environments, configuration, infrastructure. One thing that you should never, ever, ever do. Any guesses? One in one for everything? Yeah, kind of. I mean, you're in the right direction, but there's my really bad pet peeve. Any other guesses? But I mean, it's correct, but a little bit more generic than that. Anyone? Okay. Stop doing click ops. I mean, yes, one environment for one thing, and also even if you have a different environment, you actually do not do like point and click, and setting up things with click ops, because it's a kind of a joke, right? Click ops to be a derivative of DevOps and all the other opses. And But ClickOps is a really bad thing because, and this is kind of summarizing a lot of things when we talk about environments, about configuration, about infrastructure and stuff like that. Because, how often do you hear like, oh, well, we need to create a test environment. We need like 3 days to create that test environment and blah, 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 or, something like that. And you're like, wait, why? Oh, well, because, we just went through the documentation, it fails. We're doing all that, what it says in documentation, but it's not like that because version's updated, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, wait, you're actually following like a description instead of having a script for that. And that, things like that. You really don't want to do ClickOps because it comes at a little cost, but it still is a good thing. So why do you want to automate all those kind of things? One is that it's reproducible, because you can run the same script for setting up your environment, for setting up your configuration, for setting up your infrastructure and stuff like that, especially environment and infrastructure. And it's going to be reproducible. Yes, if you can, as you can see as a con, it will be coming at a cost. You will need to maintain that. I mean, that script might stop working because something got updated. You need to update something somewhere and stuff like that. But still, it's going to be reproducible. It's actually going to be your documentation of what you need to do because it's in the code. You can actually go through things and just like, oh, okay, I need to do that, this, and this. And cool. Okay, now I know that I need to create those things. And it works for your local environments. It works for cloud. It works for everything, right? And, well, kind of obvious, Captain Obvious to the rescue, it's going to be automated. Surprise, surprise, because it's scripted. And you don't really need to do all that click ops thing for 3 days. You can actually start a script, go and get a coffee or 10, depending on how big your project is. And then, you come back and everything is shiny and working and, amazing. The good thing is with this stuff is actually it's not just it's reproducible and documented and automated and all that. It's actually can save you money. And that's going to save you money in a way that, for example, you don't need to have environments running all the time. Say you have a test environment that you're using, I don't know, once a month. You can actually tear it down, delete everything, and then when that time comes, the right time in the testing period, whatever, you run a script, create an environment, everything is ready, you test your stuff with the latest tagged versions of what you're needing, what you want to test and stuff, and then you can tear it down again. You don't have to pay for that environment being on for, I don't know, 3 more weeks or whatever that would be. Okay, so there's a lot of things here. So we need to a little bit separate the things a little bit. So for environments and infrastructure and stuff like that, we're talking about doing stuff. It's infrastructure as code or infrastructure as different things. So there's typically at least two things I can mention here. It's Terraform and it's Pulumi. They have slightly different approaches to way of solving things, because Pulumi is more like code oriented, where you actually write code, while Terraform would be more of config files and stuff like that. You create your own states that you want things to be, and then it will kind of happen. That's one. That's creating infrastructure and setting up projects and infrastructure and stuff like that. Another thing is, and you can automate a lot of things, and most of the, especially clouds and even private clouds, would support that. So you can actually, um, just write once and run everywhere every time, or as you wish. Handling configuration, I kind of could not help myself. I did manage to pull in MicroProfile again. I'm kind of not sorry about that, but so MicroProfile config is a really nice thing as well. I see that I have a tiny little typo on my slide. It says MicroProfile health, but the link is correct. It goes to config, so it's supposed to be. That's copy paste. That's what happens when you do things manually. If I had a script to do that, it would never happen. But yeah, well, you don't do scripts with presentations yet. So, but anyway, yeah. So MicroProfile health config. See what happens? MicroProfile config is a really nice thing. You can actually create config files, and it has the hierarchy of files and everything. So it's really neat way of handling configuration, because when you create different environments, when you create different setups and stuff, you might want to update things. You might want to update URLs. You might want to update names. You want to update ports, whatever. All that can be handled in config. When it comes to infrastructure, I just listed a bunch of things because I want you to think about what you're running on, and if you really need to run it on whatever you're running on. So you have, if you're using cloud, private or public cloud, you probably need to think if you want to go infrastructure as a service, like renting hardware, or you want to go platform as a service, or you want to do even like things like, I don't know, you want to go with good old VMs and install things manually? Maybe not, but maybe sometimes you need to do that. Maybe you want to go Kubernetes because there is a reason for that, not because everybody is talking about that, please. Because sometimes you don't need to have full Kubernetes instance with bunch of nodes and bunch of firepower basically running there and idling and just for one tiny little hello world. Maybe you want to go serverless. Maybe you can just create an app that goes serverless and it wakes up, does what it has to do, and goes back to sleep again, and it will cost you a fraction of what a full cluster of 3 nodes and whatnot is going to cost you. So think about how do you use the infrastructure, and think about if you really need to deploy everything on yet another Kubernetes cluster. I mean, we're wasting a lot of energy and stuff with that as well. I mean, at least think about the environment. And I mean, if you don't want to think about your money or the other, I don't know. Yeah. Environment is a very good thing to think about as well, like responsive computing and all that. So with all that, I think I have, that's all I have of the slides. But since we have a little bit of time, I'm gonna show you something. You want to see some code?
Yes.
Okay, one person wants to see the code, rest apparently not, and you people on the internet probably don't want to see code as well. I mean, right? I mean, we're not at the Java conference or anything. Okay, let's see. So, yep, that's what. Come on. Okay, so we've seen this code before, right? So actually, I cheated a little bit. I put both a client code and backend code of the web service into one big web service. I'm sorry about that, but I did cheat a little bit because I didn't want to have like different ones, and it's gonna be. I was like, how am I gonna show it on a screen and everything? So if you close your eyes and imagine that, those two services are in one web service and the other ones are on the other one, you can actually. Actually, I think presentation mode was not a really good idea because I want to. Why are you not? Okay. Yeah, it wants to do that. Okay, fine. But I can do this because I want to run this thing in a terminal, and So for this demo, I am using Quarkus. It doesn't have to be Quarkus, but I just wanted to play around with Quarkus, and it's quite quick. So I'm running Quarkus in dev mode. That means that I can actually do changes to the code, and I don't have to refresh anything. It just automatically refreshes. So first, I want to test how it's going to be without my failover thing. So if I go to my web service, my client, REST client, I'm going to comment out the fallback, and then everything magically reloads and reappears. And then I should be able to have here localhost 8080 slash, what's my entry point? I have it here. It is high, very informative. I was very creative that night. I know. So what happened? Oh my God, on the first run, it's already failed. Okay, now on the third run, all good things are three, right? So it actually says hello there. But if we look at the stack here, is that there was a lot of red here, and that was because we actually got an unknown error. We got an error 500 a couple of times, and that is because of that randomness thing, right? So what do we want to do? We want to, all we really need to do is we create a fallback, and then we create another endpoint that it was going to fall over to. Save, refresh. Hey, we got actually that thing. I think it's a demo effect going the other way around. So it actually fails on the first try. When I was trying it at home, look, it still keeps on failing. Okay, now it's actually failing more than not failing. I mean, it's random, of course, but I think there is a demo effect is a thing. But you see, sometimes we fail over to another service, and we actually query another service, and oh, it works. Yeah, that's one. The other thing that I wanted to show you is how easy it is to set up a this feature toggling thing. So make things a little bit bigger. Is it big enough? So we have here two containers running. Actually, this is a lie. It's not a Docker because it has nothing to do with this talk, but I'm going to show you anyway. So I'm actually cheating a little bit. I have a Podman running in the background, but I'll list it to Docker, so I don't have to think about that. But so what I can do is I have two containers that I did. If we go back on the history, it was, well, Podman compose up, which is similar to Docker compose up, which resulted in those two containers running, and they have been, let's see, yeah, they've been up kind of when I woke up today, or well, at least when I was doing this demo, and they're up and running, so they're good. That means that I can go to a browser, and I can go into Unleash, and then I see that I have a variable here called chaos, and it's on for development mode, and it's not on for production. We can actually turn it off. And so you can actually create like strategies and stuff here. You can do user IDs, you can do IPs, like I told you, like everything coming out of the box, and really nice. And it's actually free. You just, all I had to do, go to GitHub, clone it, do Docker Compose up, and log in. That was all. So now I have a variable. And now I want to show you a little bit of code that that is actually, okay, so this is my feature code or endpoint. And I do feature toggle method, returning default message, it's a bug, unless chaos variable is on. If it's on, then it's doing feature. The way chaos, I get hold of chaos variable is through this object. And now comes a very ugly code that I'm not very proud of, but it's a demo, so I try to keep it as simple as possible. It's that I put it as a static kind of variable, or as a variable inside the constructor, because I just needed to make it quick and I didn't want to create all the other kind of stuff around it. But so don't do that at home unless you're just trying to figure things out. But all I had to do was to create a config file, config object, sorry, and put that config object into default unleash, and that's my variable. So now I can actually get hold of that variable and use it here to check a specific variable for toggling. So now, if we go to endpoint, what's it called again? Feature. See, it's this is another thing. You can actually define paths like this. You just say path feature, and then it will be available here. So feature. Actually, we can go crazy. We can say just to show you that it works. Okay, let's do first feature. So it's a bug, and no matter how much I refresh it, it's still a bug. Actually, now I want to make sure that there is nothing called my feature, and it's not, but it actually shows you another thing that you get out of the box with things like MicroProfile and stuff. This is Open API, so it actually lists the possible messages that you have or possible endpoints that you have and say, hey, look, this is not found, but you have those. Maybe you want to use one of those. That's like a side effect of this. Now I'm going to say my feature, and I'm going to refresh. And oh, it works. So, it's that easy defining endpoints and stuff. But we're still having a bug. We need to create some chaos. And we are in a development environment. That's what we've defined up there when we created an object. So now I enabled it, and I have talked long enough for it to to make it available, because sometimes you just need to takes it like a millisecond or so. And then we can go back and, ooh, it's a feature. And then we do, just to tell you, show you that I'm not lying, still feature. It soon will not be a feature. Oh, come on. There. Whew, I was getting a bit scared. But yeah, so you can do things like that really easy. And that is, imagine doing that in your production environment. Well, not converting bugs to features, but I mean, we do that anyway, right? But actually, feature toggling, things like that. And you can do that on the front end, on the back end, and all this. This is really, really cool. Okay, so with all that, I want to go back to my last slide. So this is contact information. You can ping me. This is me on Twitter. And if there is anything, just send me a message and say hi. Now, are there any questions on the stream? Can you read them for me if you can? Or if there are
Well,
any...
we had one question and I kind of answered it for you.
Oh, perfect. Amazing. I mean, look, thank you very much.
No worries.
Thanks. I mean, I can't see my
That was a
screen.
simple one, so I answered it.
I mean, I'm pretty sure you would be able to answer all kind of questions anyway. So, I mean, thank you. Thank you for answering. Are there any questions in here? Any comments, any thoughts, anything? I mean, it doesn't have to be a question. Feelings? Yes.
Just with the unleash.io, can you set up multiple different environments like dev, staging, production, sustain, have them all different configurations?
So the question was, I'm going to repeat the question for the stream. So the question is if you can create different environments for Unleash, and yes, you can. I mean, this is what. Okay, let me unzoom again. So this is what this is like. It has at least 2 different environments here, and I'm pretty sure you can. Where was it? I'm pretty sure you can create more, and at least you have 2 out of the box. Just I did not do anything, and it was just like, oh, I'm going to create one for development and one for production. And they have some features. I mean, it has to be said, they do have some features that are hidden for free version, that open source version. So I think I managed to come along with one of them. What was that? There was something about I don't remember. I think it was something about yeah. So there was like a feature that would say, "Well, we're sorry, but this is not available for non-paid version, but open source version mostly can do a lot of most of the things anyway." So yes, you can and you should, because you can have like different environments, different things all over. So yeah, that's a great question. Thanks. Any other questions? Any other thoughts, feelings? Anyone? No. Okay. Then I will say thank you very much for joining me today, and have a great rest of J Champions Conference. Enjoy the talks, and you can watch them offline as well on the YouTube channel later. So thank you all. Thank you all for watching. Bye bye. Guys,
Thank you, Rustam.
thank you so much. Thank you for answering the question. Now is where are you? There.